Dynasties, 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 dynasties.
I hereby affirm my candidacy as President of the Republic of the Philippines.
I will faithfully and conscientiously fulfill my duties as President of the Philippines.
What if dynasties aren't the disease, but just a symptom?
Tatakbo po ako sa pagka-pangulo sa darating na halalan. Tutuparin ko ng buong katapatan at sigasig ang aking mga tungkol bilang Pangulo ng Pilipinas.
What if I told you we've been looking at political dynasties the wrong way?
I will do it, even if I lose my life, my honor, and even the presidency.
I will fulfill my duties as President of the Philippines.
Dynasties are a natural feature of human society.
The offer to run for vice president became an opportunity. It's a path that would allow me to heed your call to serve our country.
I fulfill my duties as Vice President of the Philippines.
What's the real way to fix this mess?
In the first place, I was duly elected as president in 1969.
Ako ay nihalal na Pangulo ng Pilipinas.
What if banning dynasties actually makes the problem worse?
I am today announcing my intention to run for the presidency of the Philippines.
Ako ay taimtim na nanunumpa. Natutuparin ko na buong katapatan ang aking mga tungkulin bilang Pangulo ng Pilipinas.
What if I told you the real reason dynasties dominate isn't even about politics? It's about...
Alam po, magagaling sila, pero puro na lang sila. Kung paulit-ulit pong sila pa rin, ang alam ninyo, wala pong tunay na pagbabago.
Think about it. Families of doctors, families of lawyers, families of musicians exist. But in politics, suddenly it's a crime?
Dapat magpasa ng isang batas para ibawal yung political dynasty.
How did the system force us into relying on the same rich political families?
Ayaw ko po ng political dynasty.
This isn't just a political issue. It's something bigger.
Yung trapo at saka yung dynastiya, huwag natin payagang sumali sa eleksyon. Magnanakaw lang yan.
Once you see it, there's no going back.
Orion Perez is the Philippines' leading expert in constitutional reform, known for his sharp insights and engaging storytelling. His news approach combines thorough research with a unique conversational style that draws viewers in, bringing both authority and approachability to his anchor role. A polyglot and polymath, Orion was the standout grand finalist on Battle of the Brains Season 1. As a longtime OFW in Singapore, he worked as an IT project manager and tech consultant, gaining deep insights into how countries like Singapore achieved success. His expertise in root cause analysis honed through his IT career continues to inform his views. Orion is also the principal co-founder of the Correct movement, advocating for much-needed reforms in the country.
Before we begin, I would like to thank those who have subscribed to our channel. We super appreciate you. And on that note, we noticed 98% of our viewers are not actually subscribed yet, and we are trying to bring that number down to 75%. We're a new channel, and we guarantee you that we're in this for the long term. It would be a huge help to us if you click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell, as the bigger we grow, the more we'll be able to keep giving you high-quality content from some of the best and strongest people in the most fascinating fields. Thank you, and we're deeply grateful. Dynasties, dynasties, dynasties. If I had to name two major bogeyman issues that Filipino political pundits and even some politicians themselves like to blame for the problems of the Philippines, it's these two things: corruption and dynasties.
Dapat magpasa ng isang batas para ibawal yung political dynasty.
Ayaw ko po ng political dynasty. Yung trapo at saka yung dynastiya, huwag natin payagang sumali sa eleksyon. Magnanakaw lang yan.
For the most part, I would like to make it clear that corruption is actually a symptom of deeper economic root causes. It's not the root cause. If the Philippines had a much more robust economic system in which everyone had decent paying jobs and there were many more economic opportunities in store in both the private and public sector, corruption would be down to a minimum. Alas, corruption isn't the topic of this video. Dynasties are. So here's the real root of the problem. The problematic natures of the systems that we currently have are the reasons why the Philippines has so many political dynasties. But wait! Let's all please recall that dynasties are a natural feature of human society, like in Greco-Roman and other mythologies. King Arthur grew up not knowing that he was the son of King Uther Pendragon, but he inherited his abilities and was the only one who could take out the sword Excalibur from the stone. The Greek mythological hero Heracles, popularized by the Romans as Hercules, who did all those 12 tasks and other heroic deeds, was the son of Zeus. These are characters who, according to legend, didn't even grow up knowing who their biological fathers were, but inherited their abilities and their greatness. Even the Star Wars franchise, which is based on ancient character archetypes, featured two dynasties: the Skywalkers, Anakin, Luke and Leia, and Ben, and the Palpatines, Sheev and Rey. It's inevitable, even long before the mid-1800s, when Austrian Roman Catholic priest, biologist, and geneticist Father Gregor Mendel made solid observations on how genetics works, human beings have already long understood the idea that parents tend to pass on their traits and their abilities to their offspring. This is why dynasties have long been a naturally occurring and often socially accepted feature of human society. There are families of doctors, families of lawyers, families of musicians, families of academics, families of soldiers and military professionals, families of businessmen, etc. If there are families that dominate or at the very least excel in these professions and pass on their excellence to their offspring, then why is it to be suppressed in politics and statecraft? Anyway, my friend Dr. Yuko Kasuya, a political science academic from Keio University in Tokyo, Japan, did a study on the Philippines in which she found that members of political dynasties have tended to be more progressive and open-minded in their general outlook. And furthermore, her research revealed that they have also often tended to be more focused on national issues and not merely limited to just local issues. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm all for having a greater variety of leaders, politicians, and public servants, and it is my preference that they do not come from political dynasties. Just like Jose Rizal in chapter 14 of Noli Me Tangere, where Filósofo Tasio says, "No soy partidario de la monarquía hereditaria. Por las gotas de sangre china que mi madre me ha dado, pienso un poco como los chinos. Honro al padre por el hijo, pero no al hijo por el padre. Que cada uno reciba el premio o el castigo por sus obras, pero no por las de los otros." I really do agree with his point on the need for meritocracy. Honor the father for how he raised his son if that son turns out to be an achiever. But do not honor the son if his father is the achiever. This is a very important point. That said, we just have to accept that dynasties exist, and that instead of erroneously and naively going against all dynasties, we have to, instead, differentiate between good dynasties versus bad dynasties, or rather, good dynasties versus dynasties that have rotten eggs. To try to lessen dynasties, we must set up systems that ensure greater inclusivity and meritocracy so that people do not automatically inherit their positions just because of who their parents or relatives are, but that everyone has to work hard in order to get to their positions. Be mindful, though, that even where there is meritocracy, there will still be cases where offspring may still excel in the same fields where their parents excelled. This is again because genes and traits tend to get inherited, and moreover, parents will often try to raise their children in a certain way so that their children become good at many of the same things the parents are good at. It's really sad, but we have to admit that at the very root and core of the issue is our non-inclusive economic system where jobs and economic opportunities are extremely scarce, and whatever few jobs there are pay such low and pathetic salaries, causing widespread poverty. The only really rich people tend to be a few people from a few land-owning families, and these are usually the only families who can realistically succeed in the expensive, name-recall-centric political system we have in the Philippines. Given that most people would only run for office if they feel their chances are good enough to risk it, very often The only people confident enough to join politics are those who come from rich, prominent families and already enjoy surname recognition because their father, uncle, or grandfather had already been previously well known within their community, city, province, or nationally. This, folks, is why dynasties are prevalent in the Philippines. If we had an inclusive economic system that lifted up the masses to create a very strong and prosperous majority middle class, and if we had a parliamentary system that was much more party-centric so that people wouldn't really need to care too much about the individual candidates' names, but instead focused much more on choosing parties based on what those parties stand for, then there'd be a lot less of these dynasties. It's all in the systems that we have. Our systems in the Philippines keep people poor, lessening the ability of talented and dedicated people who aren't rich to run for office. It has even been shown that certain features and flaws of the 1987 Constitution made dynasties worse. A study done by Dr. Pablo Querubin, a Colombian academic from New York University, showed that the 1987 Constitution's term limits actually worsened the proliferation of dynasties. According to his research, the common pattern is this. There is a really good and competent mayor who is now on his third consecutive term, so he can't run in the next election. But because he still has some unfinished long-term projects, and because the people in his city still want him to continue on, but can't, he gets his adult son or daughter to run for mayor and complete his projects, while he then runs for vice mayor so he can guide his relative on how things are done. His famous surname and his reputation is the brand that boosts his son's or daughter's electoral chances. And that is how the 1987 Constitution worsened dynasties in the Philippines. But like I said earlier, some dynasties are good and some dynasties have rotten eggs. We need to set up systems like the parliamentary system that weed out lousy politicians, those rotten eggs, regardless of whether they are from political families or not. And in the parliamentary system, parties and platforms are the basis for people to get elected. Parties, not individual candidates, spend for electoral campaigns, and this system is not so much based on surname recognition, but on party recognition. Take out that over-reliance on surname recognition, and you can lessen dynasties. We also really need systemic economic improvements that will cause Filipinos to be much more better off economically so that we won't have the scenario where perennially cash-strapped Filipinos in little communities get enticed to vote for candidates based on utang na loob due to patronage politics and dole-outs, making them thankful towards certain rich families, dynasties, who help them out in exchange for electoral support. And no, outright political dynasty bans and restrictions are actually going to be nothing but counterproductive, symptom-suppressing band-aids that will create unintended consequences that could be worse. Such outright bans or restrictions could actually prevent communities from electing the competent leaders they want just because these competent leaders come from so-called political dynasties. Remember, there are good dynasties too. Setting up such bans could actually throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we don't want that. Even my friend and mentor, former National Security Advisor and former UP political science professor Dr. Clarita Carlos, says that dynasty bans go against fundamental democratic principles such as the right to vote and the right to be voted upon. Bottom line, fix the unemployment problem, fix the poverty problem, and you lessen dynasties. Shift to a less candidate name-centric system towards one where voters focus more on parties and you lessen dynasties. The only way forward is to have a total systemic overhaul where we adopt the right systems. We need constitutional reform that sets up a meritocratic and inclusive, FDI-friendly federal parliamentary system. My name is Orion Perez Dumdum for PGMN.